The unemployment check that shows up 2 weeks after a layoff, the tax refund that lands in your account every spring, the stimulus payment that arrived when the economy froze over, the few extra dollars you hand across the counter when prices start creeping up. Different moments, different amounts, and every one of them is the same machine reaching into your money. Most people never notice the machine at all. They just feel the money move. You already know the rough outline. The government collects taxes and it spends money, and when the economy stumbles, it's supposed to spend more to cushion the fall. That part is obvious. What's less obvious is that the largest, most reliable part of this machine isn't the dramatic bill that everyone argues about on the news. It runs on its own in the background, and it is already woven into your life, whether or not you ever gave it a second of thought. This is fiscal policy. The government using spending and taxes as a single dial to control how much demand is moving through the economy, including the demand for your labor and the prices on the shelf in front of you. Learn how that dial actually turns, and $1 trillion spending bill stops reading as a headline about Washington. It becomes something closer to a weather forecast for your own wallet. You'll be able to tell, before the effects ever reach you, whether a given policy is about to backstop your income or quietly thin out your savings. Start with the clean version, the one that fits on an index card. The government has two things it can move: how much it spends and how much it taxes. Spend more or tax less, and you're pushing money into people's hands. They buy things, businesses hire, demand rises. Spend less or tax more, and you're pulling money back out, cooling everything down. One dial. Push to warm the economy, pull to cool it. Economists call the warming direction expansionary and the cooling direction contractionary, but the labels don't matter. The dial does. And there's a reason a single dollar of government spending is supposed to punch above its weight. When the government pays a construction crew, that crew spends its wages at the grocery store. The grocery store hires another clerk. That clerk pays rent. $1 becomes someone's income, which becomes someone else's income, rippling outward. Economists named this the multiplier, and John Maynard Keynes built an entire framework around it in the 1930s, watching governments try to climb out of the Great Depression. Franklin Roosevelt's New Deal was that idea poured into concrete and payrolls, spend into the gap that private demand left behind, and let the ripple do the rest. The tax side works the same way in reverse. Leave more money in people's pockets and some of it gets spent, and the ripple starts there instead. Cut into that money, and you're pulling demand back out one household at a time. Same dial. Two ways to reach it. Once you have that, the dial and the ripple, you've picked up a small grammar. A budget headline stops being a wall of numbers. It's a sentence you can now parse. This bill pushes the dial one way, that tax change pushes it the other. And that grammar doesn't leave you once you have it. Here's the problem. That index card model is exactly the kind of thing that comes apart the moment it touches a real economy. And the way it comes apart is where this gets interesting. Because the dial isn't operated by a calm engineer watching a live gauge. It's operated by a legislature, and reality gets in the way at every step. Start with timing. There are really 3 separate delays stacked on top of each other. First, nobody rings a bell when a recession begins. It takes months just to confirm you're in one because the data always arrives late. Then comes the delay of actually deciding what to do. The response has to be debated, negotiated, voted on, signed. Then the slowest delay of all, the money actually moving. Contracts written, people hired, checks mailed. Stack those 3, and by the time the stimulus truly lands in the economy, a year may have passed, and the downturn it was built to fight might already be over. You pressed the button during the emergency. The effect arrives during the recovery. Anyone who's played a game with a delayed ability knows the feeling. You cast it for the moment you're in, and it fires a beat too late into a fight that's already moved on. Except here, firing late doesn't just waste the move. Pouring demand into an economy that's already heating back up doesn't create jobs, it creates higher prices. Then there's the direction problem. In theory, the dial turns both ways. In practice, spending is easy to turn up and nearly impossible to turn down, and cutting taxes is popular while raising them is radioactive. So the machine is far better at stimulating than at restraining. The thermostat works beautifully for cold. It barely works for heat. And the ripple, the multiplier, isn't a fixed number either. It depends entirely on how much slack the economy has. In a deep slump, with idle factories and people out of work, $1 of spending really can multiply because there are unused resources for it to switch on. Push that same dollar into an economy already running near full capacity, and there's nothing idle left to activate. The money just bids up the price of what already exists. The 1970s are the case study nailed to the wall. Stimulus flowing into a supply-constrained economy produced not booming growth but stagflation. Stalled output and rising prices at the same time, the exact combination the simple model says shouldn't be able to happen. So if the dramatic spending bill is slow, one-directional, and only sometimes works, you might reasonably ask what's actually doing the heavy lifting. And the answer is the part almost nobody watches. Look away from the bills people vote on and look at the machinery that never stops running. When the economy slumps, incomes fall, so the taxes people owe fall automatically, no vote required. At the same time, more people qualify for unemployment insurance and other support, so those payments rise automatically. The deficit widens on its own in exactly the direction the textbook wants without a single politician lifting a finger. Economists call these automatic stabilizers, and they are, quietly, the most important fiscal policy in your life. If the dramatic bill is a move you have to actively trigger, the stabilizers are the passive that ticks in the background every second, whether or not anyone is paying attention. This is the point where the mechanism reaches straight into your bank account. The reason a recession doesn't instantly zero out your household is that this machinery catches you on the way down. When you're between jobs, that unemployment check is fiscal policy touching your money in real time. When your income drops and your tax bill drops with it, that's the progressive tax code working as a shock absorber built into your paycheck. You don't apply for most of it as stimulus. It's just there, structural, doing its job while the louder debate plays out on television. And it works at exactly the moment the loud bill can't. In the depth of a downturn, the 2008 crisis, the 2020 freeze, the stabilizers were already pushing money out the door and pulling tax revenue back before a single relief package had cleared a committee. No lag, no vote, no announcement. The machinery had started the response while the legislature was still arguing about how to start it. Now, widen the lens all the way out to the number everyone panics about, the debt. Here's the part that rewires how you hear it. A government's debt is not a household's credit card. A household has to grind its balance down to zero out of a fixed income. A government that borrows in its own currency never has to hit zero. What matters is the size of the debt relative to the size of the economy and the cost of carrying it. Think of it less as a bill coming due and more as a resource pool. The real question isn't the raw number. It's whether the economy is regenerating faster than the debt is being drawn down. After the Second World War, U.S. debt was larger than the entire economy, over 100% of GDP. Nobody paid that off. The economy simply grew faster than the debt for nearly 3 decades, and by the mid-1970s, the ratio had fallen to under a quarter of GDP. The number itself never shrank. The the thing it was measured against got bigger, which sets up the one thing most people get exactly backwards about all of this. The headline bills are genuinely staggering. The 2009 Recovery Act ran close to $800 billion. The 2020 pandemic response climbed past $2 trillion, the largest in the country's history. And most people assume that's the whole story. The bigger the number, the bigger the help. But you've now seen enough of the machine to know the number is almost the least important part. What decides whether a policy helps you or costs you isn't the amount. It's the state of the economy at the moment the money actually lands. Send demand into a slump with idle capacity, and it works close to the textbook. Jobs, income, recovery. Send that same demand into an economy already stretched to its limit, and the multiplier doesn't create anything new. It just raises prices. And higher prices are not a neutral event. They're a transfer. Inflation quietly erodes the value of money that's sitting still, which means it hurts savers and anyone on a fixed income, while it helps people who hold hard assets and people who owe fixed debts, because a mortgage shrinks in real terms when the dollars used to pay it are worth less. So a mistimed stimulus doesn't merely fizzle. It reaches into the accounts of the cautious and hands value to the leveraged without a single line in the bill announcing that's what it's doing. That is fiscal policy meeting the other machines you've been mapping across this whole series. The dial pushes demand, but demand runs straight into a supply curve, and if supply can't answer, you get price instead of quantity. The spending has to be financed, which pulls in the banking system and the money supply, so the fiscal lever and the monetary lever can either reinforce each other or work against each other. The people turning the dial respond to their own incentives, which bias it toward the easy direction. And who ultimately captures the spending depends on the structure of the markets it flows into. 5 mechanisms, 1 paycheck sitting in the middle of all of them. And that's the whole map, finally drawn. Step back and look at where your own money actually sits. The price you pay for anything is set by supply meeting demand. How much money exists to chase those prices runs through the banking system. The behavior of everyone in the system, including the people writing the rules, bends toward whatever they're rewarded for doing. The markets you buy and sell in are shaped by how much competition they hold. And sitting on top of all of it is the fiscal dial, injecting or draining demand across the entire board. For 4 episodes, you've been assembling these one at a time. This is the one that connects them, because fiscal policy is the lever that touches every other mechanism at once. Take one ordinary thing, the price on a single item in your cart. That price is supply meeting demand. The demand behind it was partly injected by the fiscal dial. The money financing that injection ran through the banking system. Whether the dial got pushed at all came down to the incentives of the people holding it. And how much of your dollar the seller keeps depends on how much competition sits behind that shelf. 1 price tag, 5 machines, all of them touching it at once. So when you hear a spending figure now, you're not hearing a political scoreboard. You're running the whole model in your head. How much slack is in the economy right now? Is there idle capacity to switch on, or are we already near the ceiling? Which way is the dial being turned, and how long until the effect actually arrives? Is this the loud bill everyone's watching, or the quiet stabilizer already at work? And when the dust settles, whose purchasing power grows and whose gets thinner? You can answer those questions now. That's the whole distance between watching the economy happen to you and reading it while it moves. If this is the kind of breakdown that does something to how you see the ordinary machinery around you, the check, the refund, the price at the register, then this is exactly what the channel is built for. 8-bit economics takes complex financial systems apart and shows you the core mechanics underneath. No hype, no predictions, nobody shouting about what's coming next. Just the underlying code laid out so you can read it yourself. Subscribe so the next teardown finds you. Like this one if it changed how a headline lands. And drop a comment with the mechanism you still want pulled apart. Because this series was never really 5 separate topics. It was one system shown in 5 pieces, and you're now holding all of them. Supply and demand, incentives, market structure, money and banking, and the fiscal dial that moves across all 4. That's a working model of how your own money travels through the world. The same model most people never get to see assembled. By the time everyone sees it coming, the smart play is already over. So here's the last thought to sit with. The machine was never hidden. The unemployment check, the refund, the price that crept up while your paycheck stayed flat, all of it was always right there, moving your money in plain sight. The only thing that ever changed is that now you know which lever did it, why it landed when it did, and who it quietly paid on the way through. The economy didn't get any simpler. You just stopped being one of the people it happens to without explanation.